Today is finally the day that we're going to be talking about the Vaporfly 4% Flyknit. So I was able to get my hands on a pair early by ordering it on Monday through the Nike app. I was looking on the app in there and there was a promo that jumped right out at me that if I ordered it right away, and I had like 20 minutes to decide, not that I needed 20 minutes to decide, I could get same day shipping. And for whatever reason, I didn't think they would actually meant the same day of Monday, which was October 1st, because the official release date wasn't until October 4th. So I bought it thinking that at least that would alleviate any kind of like opening day inventory issues, and I could definitely have a pair. I wouldn't have to go sit outside the Nike store and wait. But when I got home from work that day, I actually had two pairs of shoes waiting for me. One was the Nike Pegasus Shield that I had ordered a couple days ago on the 27th of September. And I had a second box there, which had the Vaporfly inside. So a super exciting day, and ultimately a great week because I also got a new GoPro this week. So an expensive week, but a lovely week nonetheless. And full disclosure, I had to buy the Vaporfly myself. Same thing with the Zoom Fly Flyknits. Those were also purchased with my own money. No one has given those to me, and no one is reviewing these videos before they're posted or has any editorial control. So just to get that out of the way. So this was my first time running in a Vaporfly. I'd never had the pleasure of running in a Vaporfly before this. And so when they first came out, the shoes just looked space age and super weird. And I just felt like I wasn't a fast enough runner last year to be able to run in something like that. I felt like the shoe was making a statement that I wasn't quite ready to make. I'm still not sure that I'm quite fast enough of a runner to be taking full advantage of the shoe, and it definitely is making a statement, but I don't think it's quite as bold of a statement this year, and I just think that it's something that I'm mentally ready for in terms of different insecurities and other issues that I have going. That all aside, let's talk a little bit more about the shoe. It's extremely light. When you pick it up, it feels like it's hollow. Now, I've also gone back and checked some measurements in terms of actual like scale weights of this, and this is supposed to be a tiny bit heavier than the original version, and I think that's because of the Flyknit that's in here. Maybe that weighs a little bit more. I find it really hard to believe that there could be a shoe lighter than this. This is the lightest shoe I've ever held. In comparison, when I hold up the Zoom Fly Flyknit to the Vaporfly 4%, this feels substantially heavier. And now I know a lot of you have complained that this is a little bit of a heavy shoe. I never really felt that way. There's weight to it for sure, but once it's on foot and once I was running with it, I felt like it was a relatively well balanced shoe and that the weight wasn't an issue. I've also tried picking it up and comparing it to the weight of the Turbo, which I also thought was a really light shoe. This is just so much lighter. It's just in a different category unto itself. The Flyknit on the Vaporfly 4% seems to be in the similar pattern as what's on the Zoom Fly Flyknit, and so it's almost identical except for the color and the pull tab on the back, which is racing, versus the not checkered but the striped pull tab that's on the Zoom Fly Flyknit. The main difference though being that the Vaporfly's Flyknit seems to be like a layer thinner. And I don't know if it has to do with the color, the black versus the orange, or if it's that the Vaporfly intentionally has a thinner Flyknit, which is kind of where I'm leaning in terms of that feel. And so my understanding is that the actual construction of the carbon fiber plate and the ZoomX foam on this year's Vaporfly is the same as the last year's, and so I think that the commentary that I have in terms of the feel of the ride is going to apply to both this year's and last year's Vaporfly. But let me tell you from someone who's not experienced it before what it really feels like. I was expecting something to feel a little bit like this, but lighter, faster, softer. That really wasn't the case. So in the Zoom Fly Flyknit and even in the Zoom Fly SP, there's a very distinct feeling when you're walking around in this shoe that once you get to this point in your stride, the shoe kind of like jumps forward, or it feels like you're walking off a step. And then with the React foam that's in here, the way that it's formulated, or maybe it's the amount of React that's in here, it's a really soft ride, and the carbon fiber plate gives you a feeling of strong push-off. Then when you take the Pegasus Turbo, which has React plus ZoomX in it, the way that this shoe feels is that it feels really soft if you're a heel striker or when you do hit your heel on your strike. And then as you're coming through, once you hit the ZoomX part of the foot in the forefoot, it feels like it almost springs you forward. And the geometry of the shoe is much like the traditional Pegasus, the 35, where whatever it's doing, however it's shaped, maybe it's the ZoomX pushing you off of the heel or the Zoom Air Pocket in the Pegasus 35 pushing you off in the heel, or the springiness of the cushioning, whether it's ZoomX or the Zoom Air in the forefoot. It really encourages a fast cadence. So the push off is a little bit different in terms of it's just turning your foot over a lot faster. And with the Turbo, there's a springiness there that is different than the springiness of the Zoom Air Pocket and the Pegasus 35. And so I was thinking that it would be kind of a combination of these two things put together, but it really wasn't. It was something different, not entirely, but it was definitely something different. Just walking around in this shoe as I was putting it on and heading outside as I ran commute home yesterday, there's a very different feel. It's a much softer shoe. The ZoomX definitely feels very different than React, and very different than the combination of ZoomX and React that's in the Turbo. But it doesn't have the very distinct drop-off that I was expecting that you feel in the Zoom Fly. So that was a little bit more mellowed out. I definitely felt something, but it wasn't quite as dramatic as what I was used to feeling. And then for whatever reason, it feels as if there's like, not structure, but there's something in the foot where it felt like almost the arch was too high for me at first. And so it felt kind of like this. It was like in a curved pattern. I could feel it definitely on the outside of I guess the lateral side of kind of my arch, and all the way almost down into my heel in this area. So it felt like kind of like there was like something in there that looked like this. Hard to explain. I felt it on the left side of the foot as well, but to a lesser extent. But as you stepped on it, it felt soft, but I could definitely feel that it was there. And so that gave me a little bit of concern as I started running. But once I started running, it was just a completely different, not a completely different shoe, but the shoe changed characteristics quite a bit. And so that pop that I get from the Turbo, I definitely felt it very much so in the much thicker amount of Zoom X that's in the Vaporfly. And as you're running, you feel that pop up as you're going, and your stride almost, it feels like it's lifting your knees up for you, like as you run, because of the way that pops. And then because of the carbon fiber plate, you definitely feel that same push-off strength. So I've talked about how the Zoom Fly Flyknit makes me feel like I have strong push-off, and the Turbo makes me feel like I have fast cadence. It wasn't exactly a combination of the two. It leaned more towards strong push-off, but with the Zoom X in the forefoot, I also felt like it wasn't making my cadence faster, but it felt like I was lifting my knees higher. So it was a different kind of sensation that I had here. I've only had the one run in it. Some of the paces that I was going at were about anywhere between 8:20, 8:25 on the slow end to about 7 minutes, a little bit under 7 minutes per mile on the faster end for that 7.5 mile run that I got in today. Overall, I forgot to go over the statistics. 7.5 miles, 7 minutes, 32 seconds per mile for the day. So feeling pretty good. It's 5 days before the marathon, or by the time you watch this, it'll be 4 days before the marathon. So it was the last kind of medium length run, and the last run with any kind of speed in it. There might be one other event where I just get the legs turned over quick, but the last kind of, not workout, but run that I have planned before the marathon. So it worked out well in the timing to be testing out a shoe like this, because I got to put it a little bit through the paces. I didn't get to go all out or at a faster pace, anything in the mid to low sixes, but in terms of getting ready for a marathon, I felt like today's run was a really good way to prep and test out the shoe long enough distance so I could feel like how would it feel on my feet after a little while, but also a variety of paces so I can kind of get a sense for the different characteristics of the shoe. In the Zoom Fly Flyknit and in the Zoom Fly SP, I mentioned a lot of times in those videos that the shoe was really like a tale of two shoes. At speed, it feels like one thing, it feels great, I feel like I have strong push off. But when I'm at slower paces, it really feels awkward and a little bit even uncomfortable, to the extent that I wouldn't really want this as my daily trainer or as my only daily trainer. I didn't feel quite as strong of a difference in terms of the two shoe kind of characteristics in the Vaporfly. And so at fast paces, it felt like it was running with me, if not a little bit for me at times. And at slower paces, it felt like a great comfortable shoe. And so it's to the point where I was thinking I could run in this every day. I'm not sure, except for the fact that it is an expensive shoe, an extremely expensive shoe. $250 is no joke. And from what I've heard, other people, their longevity of their Vaporflies is not even to the same as what you would get to the little that I get in other Nike shoes. And so that would make me a little bit concerned to use it every day, couple that with inventory problems. And it's definitely something that I'm going to save for race days or particularly tough distance or interval days. But it just feels like a great shoe. And of course, I had to take it through some water today because that's what I just love to do. And it's something that's going to happen with the shoe anyway, specifically because this weekend for the Chicago Marathon, it does look like we're probably going to get at least some rain out there. So we'll see what happens in terms of that. Running through the water, the Vaporfly did just fine. There's something about it that seems to give it extra grip. I don't know if it's because they're doing something different with the rubber, and the rubber does feel a little bit different on the Vaporfly than it does on the Zoom Fly. There's also, I don't know if it's the fact that the Zoom X maybe compresses more than React does and gives it more of a kind of surface area to grip with. I'm not sure if it's even mathematically possible or even mathematically correct to say that the Zoom X compresses more as the foot strikes, but it just feels like I'm more planted with each stride. And so I felt a little bit more stable running in this through water than I do with the Zoom Fly Flyknit. The one issue that I did have was I had a little bit of issue getting locked in on this right shoe. I felt a little bit shaky in the heel area. I felt like the back of my heel was kind of sliding around as I had a couple of sharp turns running through the city today. At the bean, I took my shoes off for a photo, and then I retightened the shoes extra tight, and that seemed to resolve most of the issue. But maybe it's the slight thinness of this Flyknit compared to the Flyknit that's in the Zoom Fly and even in the Epic React that makes it seem a little bit less stable. But that's something I'm gonna have to keep an eye on, because in the Chicago Marathon, there are a number of 90-degree turns as you weave in and out of the city. So not something that gives me great concern, but something that I did notice. In terms of the pattern on the Zoom Fly, when I previewed some pictures of the Zoom Fly on Instagram yesterday, right after I received the shoe, people commented that out of the box, the shoes already had wrinkles in the midsole cushion, and yes, that's true. This year, it seems compared to last year's version, they've also added some texturing to the Zoom X cushion that's in there, and so that's another aesthetic effect that I think they're realizing that it does bother people, but completely normal for the shoe. It comes that way. It's gonna wrinkle. It's just a sign of use and that your shoes are actually being loved, and so I don't mind the wrinkles at all. So those are my basic thoughts on the Vaporfly 4% Flyknit. It is an amazing shoe. It's not like any other shoe that I've run in before. It reminds me of a lot of things, and I could definitely see kind of like the pieces of the DNA getting into the rest of the Nike running line, but this is just something else entirely. Is it worth $250? I don't think any shoe is worth $250 when you think about what you could really buy for $250 that's not running shoes. Is this something that, for me, as someone who loves running and loves running long distances and wants to do well in a marathon, is it worth it for me? Absolutely. Is it something that I'm very excited to have? Yes. Is it going to be my marathon shoe? Yes, it definitely is. So very excited to have that. The Zoom Fly Flyknit would have been a second choice, and I would have been very happy for that. By the way, the Gunsmoke color of the Zoom Fly Flyknit just released October 1st, as well as a pure platinum version, which I think looks amazing. So those are also really great options, especially at the price, which I think is a really good value there at $160. Yes, $160 is a lot to pay for a shoe, but you are getting a lot out of that shoe. So that's something else to kind of keep in mind. But overall, for me, it's going to be the Vaporfly 4% Flyknit. I'm really happy to have a pair in hand now because it alleviates a lot of stress that I wouldn't get it till October 4th, just a couple days before the marathon. At least now I have almost a full week with the shoe. I'll be running in it one more time before the marathon just to make sure that there's any break-in issues, that those can get also mellowed out, so that way I have a race-ready shoe come Sunday. If you have any questions, and I'm sure you guys do, feel free to leave them in the comments. I love talking to you guys down there. Thanks so much for watching today's video, and I will see you guys tomorrow.
Yo, what's going on?